In this video, we will be discussing and demonstrating the squaring shear safety and proper operation. When using the squaring shear, you want to know the safety and operating instructions prior to operating the foot shear. Become familiar with and understand the hazards and limitations of the shear. Jewelry such as watches, necklaces, or etc. should be removed prior to operation of this shear. Wear approved eye safety protection when operating the shear to protect your eyes. Protective type footwear should be worn. Do not remove the front hold down guard. This is a protective device. If the hold down is inoperable, notify the instructor immediately. Keep the hold down at the minimum gap required to feed the material into the shear. The gap should never be higher than 3/16 of an inch from the table. Always keep hands clear of the blade. This includes never reaching underneath the shear for your material. Do not misuse the shear by using it for other than its intended purpose. Never exceed the rated capacity of the foot shear. The rated capacity is listed on the shear itself. This particular shear is rated at 16 gauge mild steel as being its capacity. Keep the work area clear and clean to avoid tripping or slipping. Any malfunction or abnormality pertaining to this machine should be reported to the instructor immediately. Taking a look at a few of the parts on the squaring shear, we have our extension arms that extend beyond the shear. This helps with holding longer material. On the back side underneath, we have a blade that will shear off the material. Next, we have the table. This is where your material is going to sit when you are operating this machine. Towards the front, we have our hold down and guard. This is what will hold down the material when we are ready to shear it off, and the guard will help keep our hands out of the blade. And lastly, we have the foot pedal, which is located towards the bottom. This is what allows you to mechanically operate the foot shear. Prior to operating the foot shear, we first need to select our material and mark our material at the measurement that we want to cut. In this example, I'm going to be cutting my material to a measurement of 2 inches. I'm going to put a small mark on either side of my material at 2 inches. These small marks will allow me to line up my material and verify that it is going to be cut square. The squaring shear does have a guide located on both the right side and the left side of the shear. This guide is set perpendicular to the blade. This will ensure that we have a nice square cut. However, if our material is not square to begin with, we always want to double check those reference lines that we drew to make sure that we are creating a square cut. Placing the material up against our guide, I can slowly slide that into the shear. And as we slide that material in, we want to be looking between the hold down and the back frame of our shear. This will allow us to see where the blade is actually going to cut the material. You are looking for the point where the table of the shear ends and the blade comes down. The blade will cut the material where the table stops. When lining this up, we want to look for the small area of light coming through between the blade and the table. This is the point where the blade will come down and cut the material. Our reference line needs to be lined up exactly on that point where that blade meets the end of the table. After that, you want to make sure that your fingers are pulled back away from the hold down and guard. We can then use the foot pedal to shear our material. And you can let your material fall to the ground. There are several areas that common injuries will occur. The first injury area is with the hold down. If your fingers are underneath the hold down, when you step on the foot pedal, you'll crush the tips of your fingers. If your hands are in close proximity of the blade on the back side, this is another area that you can easily be injured. Do not put your hands anywhere near the blade. You also want to be aware of the location that both of your feet are. If your foot is located underneath the foot pedal, when that foot pedal is brought down, you could crush your foot or your shin. Additionally, if you're not careful and you lean forward, you could cut the front of your shin on the edge of the table. And lastly, the sheet metal is sharp. You want to be very careful when handling the sheet metal so that it does not cut you.